Do 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 do. Do 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 do. I think it's Eric Dollar's book. It's called Four Quadrant Theory of Energy something something. I have all his books. I've actually been through that book. He actually talks about arch forms, so I obviously give the credit to Eric Dollard on that. But I mean, everybody knew about that was into field theory before Dollard wrote a book, and it's not primarily about that. As I've said before countless times, you ever want to completely confuse a physicist, just go up to a PhD professor. Excuse me, Mr. Professor, can you define what a field is in itself? Oh, it'll completely rock their mind. All right, excuse me, Mr. Professor. How does light speed up after it leaves a medium like glass or mineral without breaking the law of conservation? Oh, completely bend their mind. They'll never have an answer for you. And it's okay not to have the answer. The fact is that they pretend to know everything, or nearly everything. Well, I have a PhD, I know what's going on. It's like, no, you don't. And that's okay, but don't pretend that you do. They can never actually tell you what a field is. Here's something else if you want to bend the mind. And this will bend the mind of even like a 40-year-old electrician. Whereas electricians don't get much in field theory. They get taught about, how to keep yourself from getting electrocuted, which is really important. It's about practical application. Yeah, you don't need to know a whole lot about field theory. But I wonder, other than solar, which we're not talking about solar, we're talking about wind and hydroelectric power, yeah, and nuclear power. Let's just take those three as an example, even though there are more than those three examples. And you can always bend the mind of a physicist, or even yourself. Now, when wind turns a wind turbine, which is connected to a gear differential shaft-driven AC generator. Yeah. Or, and I've been to the bottom of the Hoover Dam. It's really fascinating. It was like 20 years ago or so ago. These long stairs and an elevator to the bottom. We got to see the huge generators where, water is passing through the Hoover. I don't think they'll let you do those tours anymore because of security concerns or whatever the heck. These enormous generators that transmit an enormous amount of power to Las Vegas to keep the lights on, and to California also. Water is passing through, turns the turbines. And nuclear, of course, it's creating steam from water, and the steam, of course, turns, and there's some fascinating videos where they actually do maintenance cleaning on the turbines of nuclear generators. And it's absolutely fascinating. They're huge, huge, huge beasts that actually have to be aligned by sub 1/1000th of a millimeter on the drive shaft. It's absolutely fascinating. But I'm not discussing that. Have you ever thought about the fact, and of course ask a physicist this, or anybody that's into field theory. They say, excuse me, now is energy being transferred from the wind to the wind turbine? Or is energy being transferred from the nuclear reactor, which is causing heat and making steam? Is energy being transferred from the falling water that falls through an elaborate chute system, passes through the AC generator, turbine shafts? Is energy transferred from wind, nuclear, or hydroelectric? Everybody superficially, and nobody thinks about this, thinks that the answer is yes. But there is no energy-to-energy transfer there at all. Where is the energy actually being generated from? Well, everybody knows that the wind is turning the generator, and so the energy is being No. There is no aspect of the wind, and there's no aspect of the water, and there's no aspect of the nuclear that's transferring its energy, from the wind or from the water to or through the generator. The arch form that actually comprises, doesn't matter what phase the generator system is, we don't have to get that complicated or that deep. The energy that's actually being generated is spontaneously generated at the site of the generator itself. There's no energy transference, between the wind and the generator, or the water and the generator, or the nuclear and the generator. There's absolutely no transference of energy at all. Sure there is. Think about that for a second. The answer is no. There's no aspect of the wind that gets transferred. It's like, well, the wind power is turned into power. No, that's not what happens at all. And by the way, this is something I've said before years ago. I haven't said it recently. to actually describe in the most simplex terms what an AC generator is. And of course the arch form, which is a generator, yeah? And this is of course how Nikola Tesla thought of it in a millisecond when he stared up at the phases of the moon. Is this special arch form? This arch form has existed in ancient Indian, Native American, and India iconography in ancient Egypt for ages and ages. This special arch form. The energy that's actually generated at the site of the generator itself is not transferred from the wind or the water at all. So spontaneous generation of energy by what, through what, and how come? Let me correct how come or how. How would be more appropriate. The energy generated at the arch form is from the ether, of course. If, and this is undeniable, the wind is not transferring any energy to the generation of electrical power, or the hydroelectric, then the spontaneous generation of power at the site of the generator is from, because nihil ex nihilo, from naught comes naught. Where do you think that power is coming from? Where do you think it's coming from? I wanted to get back to that earlier point in describing an AC generator in its most simplex terms at all, most simplex, irreducible form, is that an AC generator is a magnet turned inside out. The magnet, of course, is on the inside. Doesn't matter what phase the magnet is. But a AC generator is a magnet turned inside out, where the plane of inertia is on the outside rather than at the center, as in the case of a magnet. And the magnetic field is on the inside. In the case of a magnet, the magnetic field is centrifugal and, of course, increasing, actually three-dimensional S-curves or force loops of the toroidal geometry of centrifugal divergence, i.e. magnetism. An AC generator in its most simplex form is a magnet turned inside out. And when the magnet is turned inside out, which of course is antithetical to Mother Nature, the generation, how do you tap power from counter space, from zero-point energy, from the ether? Who cares what you call it? Mother Nature doesn't care what silly little humans call it. When the actual motor and the stator is turned, the spontaneous generation of power is from the ether. The generator itself is not drawing, mystical energy from it. So where do you think the power is coming from in a generator? It is not being transferred from the nuclear or the wind or the hydroelectric. There's no direct energy transfer. No direct energy transfer. Well, the motion. Well, what about the motion? Motion is not energy. I don't know if you've ever looked up motion in a dictionary, but I would like a nice denotation put below for the word motion. The motion is causing the generating power. Motion, in case you didn't know it, is not a counterpart of water or of wind or of nuclear. Sure it is. No, it's not. It's not atomic, it's not subatomic, it's not an energy derivative, it's not even an energy connotative term. Motion. The spontaneous generation of energy at the site of the generator due to the motion is because a generator is a magnet to turn inside out, and the spontaneous generation of power is, of course, from the ether. This is irreducible and undeniable. There is not a single person that I've ever talked with in my entire life on field theory that I know of, I'm sure there might be some out there, that haven't thought, there's no actual energy transfer from the wind to the generator. The wind is causing motion on the cantilever blades of the wind turbine, which is causing the generator to turn, which is, generating electricity. But there's no energy transferred or sucked from or taken from. The wind, sure it is, the wind's moving and that's where the energy is taken from. Well, motion is not energy, not by connotation or denotation. The energy generated in any generator, this really upsets physicists. Like I said, this is like asking them to define a field. So, excuse me, Mr. Scientist, sir, in the case of an AC generator, don't use solar, okay? Because solar, there is a direct energy transfer. We're not talking about solar. In the case of electric, wind, or water, how is a generator generating electric? Well, the motion is turning. It's like, no, that's a description. That's not an explanation. I don't want descriptions. Well, that's what's happening. That's all I know. Well, I thought you're a PhD physicist. Yes, I am. The motion is causing the The motion is causing the shaft turn generation. That's a description. Motion is not energy. Sure it is. You have motion, you could turn anything and generate electricity. Yeah, but there's no such thing as taking energy from motion. No crazy person in the history of field theory or the world has ever said, you could take, motion itself has energy. It's like, well, this is motion. It's like, no, this is a rock moving. No, that's motion. Like if you were to attach something to it, like a, flywheel, then you could generate electricity. Well, motion, there's no such thing as drawing energy from motion. The motion is causing an arch form, which is what Tesla invented. That's what an AC generator is. Causing the arch form, which is an inside-out magnet, to spontaneously generate energy, which is carried along the path of electrical lines, spontaneously from the ether. This is undeniable. Why doesn't anybody acknowledge this fact? Why doesn't anybody talk about it? Why don't people question? You and I, not me, you, meaning basically everybody, you take things for granted. Well, that's how it works. The wind turns the propellers, propeller turns the generator, and you get power from the motion of the wind. It's like, that's a description. That's not an explanation, and it's inaccurate because motion is not generating power. Sure it is. You got motion, you couple an AC generator up to motion, you got power. Yeah, but the AC generator is not pulling energy from motion and then, turning it into electrical power to power your toaster oven or your microwave or your AC unit. That doesn't work. Nobody on earth would ever dare say something like that unless they were insane. Anyway, just think about that for a second, will you? Let it sink in. Think. Because people don't think. And by the way, descriptions are not explanations. Okay? Please don't post a description below. Thanks. Goodbye.